My name is Chris Rich, and this is the 508 Show, the show about Worcester.
I'm Mike Benedetti. Today is September the 25th, 2013. Once again, we're talking to challengers for the Worcester City Council. Today, Chris Rich, you're running for District 1 City Councilor.
That's correct.
Chris, how are you civically active now in Worcester?
Well, aside from the campaign, I've always followed politics, especially Worcester politics. I've always found it very fascinating. I've always been an advocate for Worcester, if not in action, definitely in spirit. And I believe the city's got a lot of potential. And I've always watched closely what goes on in the city, and I've decided to get involved because I just feel like the city's just not quite moving in the right direction in a lot of different areas, and I think I have a lot of skills that I can bring to the table. I can make a difference in the city.
Okay, why the city council? I think there's so many ways that somebody can get involved with the city.
Sure.
And the city council seems like the one which is definitely one of the bigger contributions you can make, but by far like the hardest way to get involved.
Well, that's a great question, and I think this is a type of role that has potential for great impact.
Okay.
And I certainly don't want to. I don't want to be careless with my time.
Sure.
And I think that the city council, having a seat in the city council, is a great way for me to take everything that I've learned over the years and take the passion that I have for the city and really make the biggest difference.
Okay.
Certainly there's a lot of great groups throughout the city that do a lot of good, and I really encourage them to continue doing what they're doing. But I really just feel like the city council is just a good fit for me personally.
Okay.
I think I have that professional skill set that's not represented in the city council, coming from an IT background.
Tell me about those skills then.
Sure. So I got a degree in finance from Villanova University. I've helped businesses large and small, some of them global, in fact. And in the IT industry, I've done everything from working the help desk all the way up to managing people and departments, managing systems, interconnecting offices across different countries. I've helped big businesses solve business problems using technology, and it's been a really great experience. And I think because I've had such an opportunity to work with technology, I think it gives me a unique perspective on addressing some of the challenges throughout the city. And it's just a private sector kind of perspective that I think too often in the city council and in city affairs in general, that gets missed. A lot of that activity you often think of, say the 495 belt or the 128 belt. I want to take some of that and infuse some of that thinking and some of that action into the city.
Okay. It's interesting that you mentioned like the background that you come from, because I actually kind of buy this argument that a diverse background is good. And I think that, for example, on this current council, the last election we saw both George Russell and the incumbent in your district, Tony Economou, who are coming in from real estate. And because this has been a time of foreclosures and all kinds of chaos around real estate and assessing houses and whatever, it's been interesting to have guys who have that kind of technical knowledge, or at least sense of things, on the council. Every time the subject comes up, they're always like, by the way, I'm from real estate. So they've been, they sell that to a certain extent. But that just sort of, I think, brings me to the district race. So, you're running as a challenger. I think that if somebody, who's living in District 1, where is District 1, by the way? How do you describe that?
District 1 is really if you look at Worcester on a map, it looks like a diamond. And District 1 is mostly the top half of that diamond, or the top, say, maybe third of that diamond. It spans really, it splits Salisbury Street in half. Okay. And then it's the Greendale neighborhood down Lincoln Street. But it does some interesting side street cuts in and out, in and around Indian Lake. So it's a little interesting, but primarily I would say, Tatnick, Salisbury is one area, and then the Burncoat neighborhood would be probably the other area, and all the way down to Lincoln Street, Great Brook Valley area too.
Okay. So anyway, this question that I'm trying to construct here in my half-awake state, a big role of a city councilor is to be an advocate, is to be an ombudsman, or whatever you want to call it, for the people in the district. So if somebody felt like, my incumbent in District 1 is doing a terrible job, I'm trying to get my sidewalk fixed and it's not getting fixed, I can understand why they would vote for the challenger. But for somebody who either doesn't have that experience of the incumbent or just doesn't know what's going on in the district, like, what have you been telling people? Like, why should somebody vote for you and not just say, you know what, the district hasn't fallen apart, Tony seems to be doing a good enough job?
Right. So, that's an excellent question. It's one that I actually volunteer when I go and knock on doors and I talk to folks. The city is, and it's not to say that streets and sidewalks aren't important. They certainly are. But I think the bigger issue is, financially speaking, the city has a lot of challenges. And it's great that we talk about things like schools and public safety and streets, but we have to find a way to pay for those things. And I'm really concerned that we have these massive unfunded pension liabilities, for example,
Right.
that I feel like are really choking off the city, and it's a gorilla of a problem, and we only keep throwing really small solutions at the problem.
Right.
And I come from a background where I tackle huge challenges day in and day out. I innovate in order to overcome these challenges, and I think that I just have a lot more to offer people for their tax dollar, quite frankly, because I have that background, and I'm a real quick study. Everything I've done in my life professionally, I've had to learn in part, as I'm on the job, and having followed politics and looked at the way things get done, I definitely feel like, as far as getting sidewalks and streets repaired, that to me seems like, the fundamentals. And,
Right.
and if I felt like I didn't have the skills to deliver on just those basic things, I think I don't think I would have chosen to run. So I really look at those types of issues as, while they are very important, I think the city has much bigger issues. And one of my biggest complaints about the city in general, and I think one of the reasons why I have such a great passion for it, is we're a big city, second largest in New England, but we too often, think and act like a small town. And I think that gets us into trouble because, we're focused on these, maybe smaller issues. And again, not to say that streets and sidewalks aren't important, but there are a lot of bigger issues. There's a lot of big opportunities that I think the city could start to capitalize on a more formal basis, but we don't, because I think...
What kind of opportunities are you talking about?
We have the potential for some other industries in the city that I think that could really take off if we just focus on them, and we try and, as a city council, as a city, build some framework around so that they can have a better chance of success. Because we really need to restore some of our tax base, because we've been losing it year after year after year. And this is a college town. We need to leverage those college students more. We don't give them any reason really to come off campus and invest in the local economy. We don't do anything to help college students after they graduate to say, hey, stay in Worcester. You can have a future here. So I want to look at programs that we can institute so that we can do more of that. I think we do a lot of great stuff in the city, but we need to do them bigger. We need to advertise them more. I was actually watching city council meeting last night after I got done knocking on doors, and one of the city councilors said, we need to do some of these things bigger. We need to advertise more. Worcester doesn't do a really great job at promoting itself, because I work towards Boston, and I'll ask people without telling them where I'm from. I say, what do you think of Worcester? And it's interesting the reactions that they have. I mean, to summarize it, a lot of people say to me, well, what's in Worcester? Why would I go to Worcester?
Right.
That right there is a clear indication to me that people within, say, a 30-mile radius don't know what Worcester has to offer. Now, I do, and a lot of people who live here do, because, we know we're here. But we're just so insulated in such a vacuum. I think we just really need to change the conversation about the city. We really need to change the dialogue so that we're looking at moving things in a more positive direction, promoting the things that we do well. I just think that there's all these things that we should be doing, and we're not. And I really want to take the charge of that. And just to go back to your point about, running for city council, I chose to go for a district seat as opposed to an at-large seat because, quite frankly, I love my day job. It keeps me busy. And to run a citywide, at-large type seat, which I think, some have said to me, well, it sounds like your ideas are really, bigger picture, more city, not so much the district. I would say, that is true, but I didn't feel like I would be successful running in an at-large situation, given the fact that my professional life does keep me quite busy. But I still want to contribute, and the district seat is the way that I felt like I'd be able to deliver the most value.
Well, I want to drill down on a couple of things that you were talking about there. We've been asking people basically the same handful of questions. I want to talk about economic development first, and we've been sort of framing this economic development question, which is a big question, around one specific situation, which is the Midtown Mall. And City Council for years now has talked about, well, we should just take that place by eminent domain. And this, for people who don't go downtown, this is a indoor pedestrian mall that's downtown. It's very much a downscale place. It's very much a place that has actual operating businesses, though, which is a little bit contrast to a lot of downtown. So it's a bit of a weird situation. Do you support taking the Midtown Mall by eminent domain?
In that situation, no, I don't. I think eminent domain is a valuable tool, but it's a dangerous tool because depending on the way in which it's used, it can work for you and against you. And I think too often, I think eminent domain is used excessively. I don't think taking Midtown Mall by eminent domain is the problem, because if we take it by eminent domain, well, now what? We still have to find somebody to do something with it. So what I'd much rather do is work with the current owner of the building, and if they're not willing to, come up with any new ideas on what to do with the space to attract and generate more business, then we look at the neighbors, we look at the surrounding areas, because downtown there's a business like Armsby Abbey, which I'm a huge fan of. That's a great establishment. You go in there, it's exciting, it's always busy. It's just got a great vibe to it, and I'd like to see that spread farther down Main Street. And if it has to start at one end and work its way down to the Midtown Mall, it will take time, but I'd rather have organic things like that happen. But I think the City Council's responsibility is, try and stay out of the way, but also at the same time, draw attention to it, bring people, into that area to say, look, your business could be here, and look at this other business next door, or these other businesses next door. And I think that would start a chain reaction. We really have to start from scratch downtown, I feel, especially in and around City Hall, because there's just nothing there. We have that, amazing City Square project there. Where are the tenants? We should every day be talking to somebody. Hey, would you be interested in moving your business here? Look at all the space that we have. Look at all this, this new infrastructure that's getting built. Those are the kinds of things that I'd like to see happen more often.
Okay, I want to ask you about economic development in general, because you were talking about we need to bring more business into the city, more jobs into the city. I think this is something everybody would agree about, and I think that, and every candidate we've talked to has said this, and I think everybody's frustrated by the situation, including maybe many of the current councilors. I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on this, and especially, like, how you would contrast your approach with the kinds of things the council already has been doing on economic development.
Well, I think the big challenge in the city council is that, there's 11 different people, including the mayor, and I think that what's required is some leadership to step up and say, I have an idea. It's not a perfect idea, but I do need all of the other councilors to buy into this idea openly, publicly, and say, I like your idea, Councilor, whoever you are, and maybe it's Councilor Rich in 2014, 2015. Let's put our support behind this. Let's as a body say, these are the things that we're going to do, and we're going to stick to that strategy. We might change our tactics as we go, but I think that's really what's missing, and that's what I would like to do. And what I do as a day job, I don't have direct authority over individuals. Everything that I do professionally in my current role is to influence people, to give them a reason to buy in, to give them a reason to move forward on a particular project, to inspire them. And I think that's really what is missing is more of that leadership. Look, I have an idea. Let's unite together. Let's move forward. Because I think the people in the city of Worcester, are continually frustrated because they don't see a lot of working together on more of the bigger issues. I think it's really easy to work together on some of the smaller issues. But the bigger stuff, where is that speaking out of, I believe in this, this is why I believe in this. I would stand in front of any constituent and say, this is why I believe this. I'm also willing to hear what their input is. I ask people all the time when I go on knock on doors, what would you do? You tell me. It's real easy to point out a problem, but it's another thing to come up with a solution or two, because that's the way it works in the private sector. You don't go to if I went to my boss and said, I have a problem, fix it, that doesn't fly. That gets me out the door. You got to come with solutions, and that's why I challenge the people that I talk to that point out problems. I ask them for what they would do, and you'd be really interested in what some of the answers are. And I've definitely incorporated that into my thinking and in my conversations as I go out there and knock on doors.
Have you been learning stuff during this campaign?
Oh, absolutely. I've learned lots of history about the city. I've learned the history behind issues throughout the city. I was talking to one constituent up on Indian Hill who gave me this great history behind Norton Company and how they came here and how they were going to expand the manufacturing there, but the tax rates became an issue and they decided to locate it in Northborough. I've learned I've knocked on doors of people who served in the city council in the past and didn't realize who they were. Had great conversations with them about the different changes in the political structure. Learned about influencers in different neighborhoods, different issues. All kinds of things, and different perspectives too about how people feel about things. I'll ask them, what did you think about the slots? What did you think about our taxes going up? What did you think about the reassessments? What do you think about our senior citizen population who continually get hit the hardest when taxes go up? And it's just really interesting to get people's perspectives on things. I don't always agree with all of them, but it's just great dialogue either way.
I want to ask you, do the children in your life want to live in Worcester when they grow up?
I sure hope so, and my goal,
really,
yeah,
okay,
I sure hope so. I mean, they're still a little young. I think, I think I don't think they really quite have that maturity and context to really say, oh, I'd like to live here. I mean, one of the best things that I did was I left Worcester.
Okay.
I left Worcester for a few years, and that was a great experience. And I came back because I just believed in Worcester. There was something calling me back to Worcester. Something I wanted to give back to Worcester because it just has such a great place in my heart. And
where were you living in those intervening years?
Well, when I went to college, I lived in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And that was a great experience. It gave me an opportunity to see how cities operate other than Worcester.
Yeah.
Because all I knew before I left the city was how Worcester did things, and maybe a little bit in Boston, but I didn't know Boston really well. Whereas when I was in Philadelphia, I got a chance to really get to know the city.
Yeah.
I spent obviously some time out on campus, which is 12 miles west of Philadelphia, but there was a train route. Friends and I would take the train into the city often. There was all kinds of events. There was all kinds of things to do. It was interesting to see, just how the city operated, how what the pulse of the city was. And I think a lot of that perspective, and also too traveling for work, I've had a chance to see, some other cities across the country. Like I was recently in Minneapolis for just an overnight, and it was just incredible what they've done in that city. Because I'd been there in I think the mid to late '90s when I was working with another company, and I got to see it sort of like in a before and after state.
Right.
And it was really interesting. It was inspiring because I look at another city. And I think that's another thing too. Is you got to look outside. There's a lot of great things that are going on throughout the country. One of the things I'd like to do is institute a free municipal Wi-Fi system in the downtown area, and and that's been done in many other places.
Right.
And I think that has a lot of potential to attract some positive attention to Worcester. I think it would be great for the citizens, but it's great to see how other municipalities deal with their challenges. And I don't think we necessarily have to rebuild the wheel. I think we need to say, hey, look at what's going on in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Look what's going on in Honolulu, Hawaii. Let's look at what's working in other places. We don't have to necessarily come up with all the bright ideas, but let's look and see what else is out there.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's done often enough. I mean, when in doubt, Google it out, right? Isn't that the way the expression goes?
I like that. I want to ask you about regulation also. And we've been talking about the chicken ordinance in Worcester, which I think I still don't really fully understand this, but the way it basically went is people in Worcester wanted to raise chickens. The city council said, after a lot of debate, okay, fine, you can raise chickens. And then they said, well, but we don't actually want to hire somebody to deal with being the inspector for that. So now a lot of people in the city have chickens, but it's just a little bit on the down low. I just want to ask you, do you feel I don't know. What thoughts does this provoke vis-a-vis regulation?
So my feeling on the matter is, and matters in general is, what you decide to do on your own property is your business.
Okay.
But when your business starts to affect other people's business, I think of chickens. I think of, the noise, maybe a strong smell, depending on how well their enclosures are kept. I think once you start impacting your neighbors, I think that's when it becomes an issue. And I think, for the most part, when people do things on their own property, and they're not disturbing somebody else, I think that's fine. I think, but what the responsibility is, if that's what you decide to do, you need to be responsible for that. If the city has to get involved, if we have to, come up with ordinances and laws to control that, that's when it falls apart. And I really have to say, anybody who wants to do that, just be responsible, and you won't have a problem. And in general, that's just the way most things work. And that's the way I think too. Is I'd rather have conversations with people and say, look, this is the issue that's coming to us, coming to me, and it needs to get addressed within a reasonable period of time. And start that route first before we start talking about ordinances.
Okay.
I think that's the better approach to take.
Now, earlier you mentioned the city's issue with unfunded pension liabilities, and generally the question of, is the city, as a city government, economically sustainable? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, and again, especially like how you would contrast your approach to those issues with the way it's currently being done.
So I don't think that it is financially sustainable long term.
Right.
I'm concerned 10 to 15 years from now. I don't think that this is going to be an issue, in the near future. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something about it right now. I really think it's vital. It's not a gee, wouldn't it be nice if we started chipping away at this? I think it's vital. I think any business that might potentially want to come to the city is going to look at that and go, I see that as a risk. I see that as an uncertainty that as a business owner, or even potentially as an entrepreneur, I see that as a risk to my ability to support a livelihood or to run a successful business. And, I think we need to, we got to do two things simultaneously. We got to raise more revenue. We got to, rebuild that tax base. And we have to reduce costs. It's just all there is to it. Or else the alternative is taxes keep going up, fees keep going up. We got those, in my neighborhood, we got these, recycling bags. These clear recycling bags that your bottles and your cans and, those recyclable items, not paper, would go into. And at first I thought, oh, wow, look at this. Wow, this is really great. Worcester, doing more in terms of, recycling and being more of a green city. I thought it was really great. And then like maybe 2 days later, I think it was maybe even a week later, I looked at those bags and I go, wait a minute. I have another kind of bag in my house, and they're yellow. And I have to pay for those.
Right.
And then I started to wonder, am I going to have to start paying for these clear recycling bags as well? It's that kind of thing that the city is, and that might not be a great example of that, but that's the kind of thing that we're going to be paying more and more and more because we're not able to tackle these, this bigger issue. And we've taken some steps towards it as a city, but they're too small. If you look at,
well, what are some big steps as far as raising revenue and some big steps as far as cutting costs?
Cutting costs and raising revenue. I don't think it's necessarily. There's not one giant fix on either side. It's going to be a lot of smaller issues, a lot of smaller things. I think we need to look at the budget, top to bottom, and to see exactly where our money goes.
Okay.
I want to make sure that public safety is maintained. I want to make sure that the school system's funding is maintained. That's really vital to the city. But there are other areas that we really have to look at, or else the alternative is taxes go up. And then on the revenue generating side, a lot of people, when I talk about the college students, a lot of people say, well, these colleges and universities, it's great what they do with these properties, but they're taking these, a lot of these properties off the tax rolls. They're denying us the ability to bring in a business, that will generate some tax revenue. A lot of people, like to talk about, an expanded pilot program like they have in Boston. They have a whole task force that goes to colleges, universities, as well as nonprofit organizations. I think a lot of people say, they look at the colleges and universities, and it's getting more and more frustrating because, they know that they charge us, they charge their customers, 30, 40, 50, sometimes, more than $55,000 a year for their customers over the course of 4 years.
Right.
And, and then they leave, and then they pay for a lot of things in cash. They have, massive amounts of cash lying around, and even though the IRS may classify them as a nonprofit organization, a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, they appear to be, pretty well flush with cash. I mean, how come they're not on a more regular basis contributing to the city? And I know that the city manager has been instructed to go around and ask, and some universities have contributed, which is great. But
I have to say, it feels like Pilot so far has been some really fairly trivial contributions from the colleges, and that the colleges are getting really sweet expedited whatever. Expedited zoning is not the right word, but some really sweet things as far as Clark wants to take over Downing Street, and it just happens really nicely. WPI wants to do this and that with their land. It just happens really nicely in exchange for like a couple $100,000 here, a couple $100,000 there, which in the if there's $100,000 laying on the ground, we would certainly pick it up.
Sure.
But like in the context of the city of Worcester budget, this just seems. This doesn't seem like a big impact.
Well,
program so far.
No, I agree, and I think too. I think the city. I think the city looks at a college or university saying, I would like to develop this area over here. I'd like to, block the street off, like in the case of Clark. I want to, cut off this street here. I want to, buy these properties and put something and put a dormitory there or whatever. The city of Worcester, looks at that as, oh, great. Here's another stretch of street that we don't have to maintain anymore. We don't have to worry about, the houses falling into disrepair. Right, it makes the city look better. It makes sure that we have a good relationship with the college or university. So let's allow them to go forward with these projects because it improves the look and feel of the city overall, which is great. I'm not denying that, and I certainly don't want to have any kind of adversarial relationship with colleges and universities. But a significant portion of our population, are college students, which are mostly on these campuses, and I really would like to see them do more, and they do a lot, and I'm not saying that they don't, but I would like to see them do more.
I can appreciate that. I want to ask you now a couple of the really important questions. What's the most push-ups that you've ever done?
I would say it's about 55.
That's a lot of push-ups. That's more push-ups than I can do. I guess not a lot in the big picture. Are you like an athletic guy? Do you do sports and stuff?
Yeah, in general, yeah. I like to run. I worked at a bike shop in Worcester for 8 years. And
what bike shop?
Fritz's Bike Shop.
Okay.
On West Boylston Street.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was in the neighborhood, which is where I live now, which is where I grew up. Born and raised in District 1. I rock wall climb. It was a sport that I got into in the last few years because my kids do it. My oldest daughter climbs competitively.
Oh, really?
So I go to the Central Rock Gym. Plug for Central Rock.
Sure.
Great place. Up in the Burncoat neighborhood, right down the street from Higgins Armory. Mm-hmm. And in general, I like to stay. I like to stay fit. I like to take care of myself. Of course, I fall off the exercise bandwagon from time to time. But
sure.
I've run in a lot of the local races. I always do I've done the J Lions 5K many years. I've done the Firefighter 6K.
I have to ask you, what's your 5K time?
My best 5K time was I think it was 22:40.
Okay.
I came in. I think maybe 20th in my age division. Pretty proud of that.
The other question I want to ask. This is a question that Brendan was really interested to talk about, which is, what do you carry with you on a daily basis?
On my person, it's just wallet, keys, and my phone.
Okay.
But we were talking, before we started here, and we talked about other things. I definitely like to Boy Scout at heart. I have, in my car or near me, I always have a pocket knife.
What kind of knife?
Sorry?
What kind of knife?
It's just a 3-inch folding knife.
Okay.
With some serration to it. I have a flint and steel.
Okay.
I got it really cheap at an Army Navy store, and I thought, gee, that would be nice to have on me. A flashlight, a small compact LED flashlight. I always make sure I have water in my car. I got stuck in some bad snow coming home from work once, and I was stranded in my car for a few hours. So it was nice to have some supplies. I always have like an energy bar or granola bar on hand. So I like to be prepared. At home, I like to make sure there's always water. I have a generator because we got hit really hard with the ice storm a few years back. So. Yeah, I like that the city is advertising this, preparedness. I think it's really important that people, think about these things in advance because, bad weather and bad conditions can sneak up on us at any time. And, nationally, I think it's no mystery that, we have an aging infrastructure in terms of, utilities.
Right.
We still have a lot of wires that are above ground. In my neighborhood, up in the Burncoat area especially, with that ice storm, we were hit pretty hard because a lot of tree limbs came down and took polls and things with us. And when when you're out of power for 5 days, it gives you a different perspective on life.
It sure does. We got to cut you off because we're running out of time. But Chris Rich, District 1 Challenger, thanks for being on the show. This is Mike Benedetti. You can email us at pieandcoffee@gmail.com if you have any complaints. Otherwise, we'll see you next week, Worcester. Bye-bye.